Thank you. Okay, so welcome to the working group meeting. I'll be facilitating today. So first item on the agenda is new faces. Do we have any new faces here today that want to say what's up?
Hey, what's up? My name's Elliot Shanks. Restarted yesterday. I was the product manager for Buildpacks a year ago for about a year and a half prior to last February. So I am coming back again. So happy to be back.
Welcome.
Welcome back.
Hey, I'm Adam. I'm a DevOps engineer at Greenhouse. I got acquainted with a couple of you last week because I did an open source PR on I guess Node Engine Buildpack. And so, yeah, I'm doing a ton of Buildpacks work pretty much every day right now. So I'd love to be more involved.
Awesome. We're so glad you're here. Okay, moving right in. The next item is outstanding project level RFCs. So I will share my screen and we can get right into it. Okay, so it looks like right now we just have the RFC for the Git build pack that Jen had put in, and I don't see her in this meeting. Does anybody want to speak to this or know what we're waiting for?
I don't think we're waiting for very much. I think I talked to Emily briefly about this. I think that the RFC kind of as it exists, it makes sense for us to just say, yes, it makes sense to have a Git repository or a Git build pack. We'll implement it with a small handful of these environment variables. And there's like some extensions for functionality that other folks want, but those can come as like follow-on RFCs on the repo itself and don't have to be like negotiated all ahead of time. So I'll just reconnect with Jen and have her like brush up the RFC to basically say that, and then I think we're good to go.
Do we have a set of maintainers for this? Is this going into a predefined group or anything like that, or is it just
I'd be happy to take it in tooling since it's kind of in that space, similar, I guess, to like build plan. Unless anyone has a better idea. No?
I'm good with that.
I'll make sure that's called out on the RFC as well.
Fabulous. Thanks, Ryan.
Do the build packs like CA certificates also fall under the tooling team currently, or like who owns those?
They're under Java because the Java team built them.
Do we maybe want to co-locate all of those build packs at some point? So like build plan, Git, CA, procfile, environment variables, etc.
Yeah, it's maybe worth having a conversation with Emily about the future of that. It might help them with onboarding some more Java folks to backfill her position.
Would it make sense for, like, I could take that as an action to just go ahead and drop an RFC in the top level RFCs repo to just basically say that these should be split out into some sort of group?
I think you should have a conversation with Emily first.
You got it. I can do that.
Cool. Thanks, Forrest. Anything else on this RFC? Cool. All right, let's move on to the language specific RFCs. Let's see what we have. We have the RFC to add package metadata to stacks. Anything to add here?
There's two unresolved comments from Cash Up on here that I meant to address, but haven't gotten around to yet. Sorry about that, Cash Up. And then otherwise, it's up for review from the maintainers here. But the two questions are, if we decide to ship the Dockerfile OS-based images to users in the future, would we utilize the same IO Paketo stack packages label? And that's a good question. Right now, as it stands, I think we would, until, like you said in the second comment, if we decided to get a more generic label for that. But that seems to be I'm not sure what, Marty, do you remember the context about why we initially opened the RFC here in Paketo rather than the CNB? I know you remember talking to Stephen a little bit about that.
I think we addressed it a couple weeks ago in one of the Paketo working group meetings. I think Emily explicitly said some comment like this being the testing ground for things that may go into the Buildpacks project later on.
Right.
And since we weren't exactly sure what we wanted this to look like in the Buildpacks project, it made sense to start here with our stacks. And if it works well, we can move it up to Buildpacks.
I have a quick question, and you'll have to mind my ignorance here. Is there any penalty for just blasting all of this data into the image metadata, or is it negligible?
Penalty as in?
Like size, pull speed, anything like that?
No, I mean, it's super, super marginal.
Cool. Just figured I'd ask.
Cool. So just waiting for some approvals on that.
Yeah, Kashyap, did those answer your questions? I can type out a formal response, but unless, did that suffice for those 2 questions?
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
Could you still at some point type even a semi-formal response up for that just to keep a good paper trail?
Yep, you got it.
Cool.
Sweet. Okay, let's move on. RFC to add proc file as standalone build pack to Tiny Builder from Forest.
Yeah, sorry, Frankie. I saw that you had opened up a comment on this. I hadn't had a ton of time to look at it.
Yeah, basically the TLDR here is the proc file does say that it works on Tiny, and I like the proc file implementation seems to in fact do that, but I think that the proc file needs to be set up differently, and so I just wanted the RFC to like explicitly give an example of like how the different way that users need to specify things in the proc file to have it work on Tiny, because I don't think right now we have an example of that anywhere that I could see.
Sure. I think it'll be kind of a pain though. I took a look at that example for like a half second, and it's like a precompiled binary jumble for like a standalone like Nginx stack or something like that. The actual RFC itself is not super interesting. I have misspelled the word "the" in the last source material though, so I'll go fix that. Damn it.
All right. Do you need anything from anyone for this, Forest?
I guess what I would say is like this is like a good catch. What do you need to see from me in order to accept this and then have us move forward?
I mean, like some indication anywhere of like how this actually works on Tiny beyond like it says it does. I'm sure there's like some example somewhere, even just like adding it to the prior art, just like something that I can run to see that it works that will give an indication of like how we can add a sample to the samples repo / to the builder smoke tests when it comes down to implementing this.
I will find you a sample then.
Great.
Cool. Any other questions on this RFC? Okay. I think that's all we had for language specific RFCs, so we can move on. We have GitHub repo ownership. Sorry, .github repo ownership.
Yeah, this has come up a couple times in different Slack channels. There's a repo we have that's not currently under anyone's ownership, and so therefore no one's reviewing PRs or merging them. In fact, I think the repo has a couple of PRs that just stayed open for weeks on end. So I'd like to get that under someone's ownership so we can hold folks accountable to have that stuff kind of merged. And I was just wondering, like, there seems like some obvious candidates for that particular repo in terms of what it is and what it's responsible for. There's a content team, mostly since it is, for the most part, just plain text that appears in certain places, including like our issue template and our PR template. But then there's also the tooling team you could possibly put it on. I could make an executive decision and just tell a team that they're going to take it, but I'd like to hear some.
Kashyap, do you have any dissent to owning the .github repository?
I zoned out for like a minute there. What's in that repo? Is that the issue templates and stuff?
Yeah, issue templates, PR templates, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's fine. I feel like it could, seems like content stuff to me.
Fantastic. Congratulations on your newfound ownership of this repository. First duties will be merging at least 2 PRs that have been hanging open, but I'll get you all set up there in a minute.
Didn't realize it was getting work. Maybe I don't know. Anyway.
Someone had brought this up the other day, but is there a reason why this has to have like a team associated with it? And like well, I guess then anybody can merge stuff in, but is that not a possibility?
It mostly has to do with the governance structure. We don't have any sort of structure for a situation where there is a repository that isn't owned by a team. And so then like it brings into a lot of questions like who is allowed to merge a pull request, who's allowed to administer the repository, what are the rights therein. We just don't have governance structure around that. I'm open to the idea. We just would need to define the governance structure for what such a thing would look like before we just did it.
Gotcha. Okay. So maybe that's like a future discussion topic.
Discoverability would probably also be an issue where that's concerned, because I'm not sure that anyone would be notified necessarily if they're not like tagged as code owners. They'd probably have to just see that there needs to be PRs accepted or reviewed.
I mean, we could theoretically make a group that is every contributor.
Sure.
It's like an all contributors sort of deal. And then any contributor or maintainer could come take a look and then approve or do whatever.
Sure. I was just pointing out that they would be relevant to the conversation if we do decide to go that route of like an all.
Cool. Moving on, we have .NET maintainer nominations.
There are 2 nominations that I've currently opened, and the previous maintainer that I was a maintainer with in .NET has been MIA for a couple of weeks. It probably makes sense to move him out of being a maintainer and being maybe just a sole contributor. And then I guess that would either give me the sole power of supermajority over electing maintainers, or the steering committee could step in and elect them as well. So I guess what's the protocol here? Because I don't know that we necessarily have that 100% flat hammered out yet.
I think that maybe we could use an addendum to the existing governance document that outlines this particular case. But in like some generous reading of the document, it's my understanding that the steering committee in this situation could act as effective maintainers on the repositories that you're on the team, and stand in for votes for the maintainer. So if I stood in to vote now, with there being 3 maintainers, Josh, the missing maintainer, if I were to vote, you'd have a supermajority for the new maintainers you want to promote. At which point you then could consider removing Josh from the maintainers group.
Within the maintainers themselves?
Yes, since you would have, what, 4 maintainers, Josh being one of those?
Yeah. In that case, then maybe we can do that asynchronously after this meeting. We don't need to do it right now.
Yeah.
We should probably do the same thing for the other repos that he was a maintainer on. I think tooling.
Yes, so this brings up the next topic, which is this emeritus maintainer / contributor status. In doing a bunch of kind of team maintenance the other day, I have noticed that there are a number of folks who are still either listed as maintainers or contributors across a bunch of the teams who don't actively contribute or maintain anything at this point. So we've got Dan Thornton, who's a contributor or maintainer across a number of things, and then also Josh, who just recently left the team. And so I think that those folks should probably still maintain recognition of having been a maintainer or contributor. So probably we could go to the existing community page where we list like folks who are on the different sub-teams, and we could update their affiliation as being, you know, an emeritus member of those particular teams. So they're still recognized for the work, but that they would actually be removed from the permission set for like an active maintainer or contributor group. I can write up an RFC to describe this process so that it's like outlined in the governance structure, and then we can continue from there. I just wanted to float it as an idea to begin with.
Beyond just recognition, it's purely an honorific title at that point. Like this is recognizing that you did work in the past and were a maintainer.
Yes.
Okay.
They have no status under the governance rules, so other than just like being recognized.
Do we maybe want to move in phases as well? So sorry, my only other thing would be something like moving a maintainer, you know, moving from being a maintainer to down to being a contributor, becoming an emeritus contributor, if you still are no longer contributing, doing that? Or do we want to just, if you are yanked from a list, you have to get put back onto it if that's something that you want to continue to do? I'm not asking you for an answer right now, but that might be something to think about in terms of people's time dedication shifting and that sort of thing.
I guess it does make some reasonable sense, since normally the way a maintainer would have gotten to the maintainership position was through having been a contributor to begin with. So I guess it does make sense if you were a maintainer, an active maintainer, but are no longer necessarily an active maintainer, you could be demoted to contributor status, but also hold like emeritus maintainer position. And then if you continue to be inactive, at some point you would then be just demoted from the contributor group. Again, I can write up an RFC around all of this and we can hash it out in the details there.
If I could add, my only thoughts are to keep in mind like this notion of what we're trying to accomplish and what it means to be a contributor. And if it's known that there really aren't going to be contributions, that kind of step down adds kind of some process that maybe some overhead when we start talking about like, what does it actually mean to be a contributor? What do we expect? And this, now you're kind of in a zone that is known will probably fall off at some point, but we're kind of doing it through formalities, I guess. So just playing devil's advocate a little bit, not that I have a strong opinion either way, but wanted to throw that out.
The only other thing that I might throw out as something for you to consider is something like contacting the person of interest that is going to be like, I'm not necessarily saying like you have 30 days to get back and start contributing again, but like, hey, we've, you know, something along those lines.
That could even be like an automated process at some point too, down the road. If we wanted to remove like any personal hard feelings, we could have like the bot send an email that's like, your contributor status is expiring due to X number of inactive days.
Yeah, these all sound like reasonable things to me. We can maybe discuss the RFC next week or whenever that's ready and iron out the details there. Okay, that's everything on the agenda for today. Is there anything anybody else wanted to chat about?
Maybe if I could
random.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's awesome seeing someone on a list today that's not from VMware. Welcome, Adam, by the way.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask the very last RFC that was up. I couldn't tell, Forrest, were you saying that we don't actually have an issue, we don't believe, running on the Tiny Stack, or was it that we do have one and we'll add tests to show that it works? I'm wondering if it is still should be classified as an RFC if we believe that it works. We just don't have the right ways to show that it's working.
I believe that there is a way for you to run on the Tiny Stack using the Procfile build pack. I think the RFC should still stand because the RFC in question is to add that build pack to the builder.
Okay.
And so it's just a matter of showing that it actually does work.
Cool.
Yeah, like as a maintainer with respect to the RFC, I just kind of wanted to see like an example under sort of like the implementation section, such that when it comes time to actually add it, whoever like adds it will have a path forward on adding requisite tests.
For sure. Thank you.
Any last thoughts? Okay, well, that concludes the meeting for today then. Thank you, everyone.
See you, folks.
See y'all.
Bye.